So I see you two are having a bit of a debate. You seem pretty reasonable. You seem like you're poised. I know he's poised. I was speaking to him earlier. So what I want to do is just play the role of moderator. Are you guys okay with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. So I'm going to start off basic, and then I'm going to ask some questions, and then we'll go from there. I know his perspective as far as what brings him out here today. I want to ask you, what brings you out here today?
What brings me out here today is I actually used to be on his side. I used to be on his side of the fence. And then when I was about 16, I was with an abuser, and I almost had to have his baby and be stuck with that man forever. And if I had been forced to do that, I wouldn't be here. Just on the planet, it would have ruined my life.
I'm sorry to hear that. I know we spoke earlier, but I'm going to ask you again, just for the sake of this, what brings you out here today?
I believe that all lives matter. I believe that from womb to tomb, that children's lives matter. I believe that every child deserves a voice. I don't believe it's a clump of cells. I believe it's a child developing. I believe that that child deserves a choice and deserves to speak for itself. And if it can't speak to itself, we want to speak for the child.
Now, question. The overarching theme, is there any compromise, and I'm going to ask him the same question, in terms of limitations, as far as like time frame is concerned? Also, what's your stance on the libertarian argument that some people are like, well, I'm okay with abortion, I just don't like the idea of my tax dollars funding it. What's your take on that?
So in terms of compromise, honestly, abortion being legalized, there's a lot of states that have tried to make it like you can't get an abortion past 12 weeks. Most people don't know they're pregnant at 12 weeks. So in terms of limitations, these late-term abortions that people talk about aren't common, and usually they're for life-threatening reasons. So when you talk about limitations, the people who are talking about limitations don't actually know anything about the female body, about the reproductive system. I've heard these people talk about ectopic pregnancies, and they have no fucking clue what it is. They're like, well, that's a baby. And it's like, no, that baby's going to kill. Like, it's not going to live either way. And in terms of the libertarian argument, I mean, most of their tax dollars are actually going towards other things. Like, if you want to be mad about your tax dollars going somewhere, you can look at the military. You can look at a bunch of other stuff that your tax dollars are funding. Most of the medical procedures are covered by insurance or other things like that. And some of them you just have to pay out of pocket. It's not even a tax thing. So, yeah.
So no compromise in terms of like time frame or anything like that. So none of those arguments, no compromise at all?
So in terms of compromise, I think the real compromise is letting it be. Because with abortion being legalized, there are actually less abortions happening. And there are more safe abortions happening. When you take that away, it just makes things worse. So if you leave it alone and everyone stays in their own lane and we take it out of politics, which, by the way, it wasn't a political thing until the Republicans realized they could use it as a way to get the church on their side. If we take it out of politics, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We'd just be able to stay out of each other's fucking business and just let us take care of our own stuff. If you can sit there and be like, oh man, I don't want to vaccinate my kids, I'm like, well, that's a choice. I don't agree with it, but like, it's your kid. Like, just there's certain things where you can agree to disagree, especially when it comes to medical stuff.
Thanks. As far as your argument, do you feel like there's any possible compromise? I know earlier we spoke about in the cases of like rape or incest. Also, what do you feel about the argument, the libertarian argument? People are okay with abortion, they just don't want their tax dollars funding it. Can you find any compromise on your side of your argument?
I mean, basically the libertarian argument, especially here right now, they're saying my body, my choice. That's basically their argument right now. And why can't we make a choice of where our tax dollars can go? It's really hypocritical if you look at it. If you really, really pay attention, if you really, really look at it, it's a hypocritical statement, because we should make a choice of where our tax dollars should go. And we definitely, abortion should be defunded all around. I make my answer short and simple, but that's where I stand on. That's where I stand on.
Now, with the possible overturning of Roe versus Wade, because it's not confirmed yet. This is based off of a leak. It's not confirmed yet. We both can agree on that, right? It's not confirmed yet. Now, what do you feel about it going back to the republic level of things? It won't be federal. States that want to have abortion, they could have abortion. States that don't want to have abortion, they don't have to have abortion, because those decisions would be based on the constituencies of those states. I've asked you first. I'll let him go first this time, then I'll go to you.
So can you reiterate that question real quick?
Absolutely. So Roe versus Wade, it made it where every state had to have abortion legal. It was federal. Roe versus Wade being overturned doesn't necessarily mean that abortion will be banned or illegal, but it could be in certain states depending on what the people of that state want. So, for instance, Alabama probably won't have abortion anymore. California, I'm sure they'll still have abortion. That's just to set up the context. So, are you okay with that? Like, do you feel like that's fine? Everybody handle it on the republic level. Let the constituencies of that state vote on what they want for their own state?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you look at Roe versus Wade, the woman actually lied. She lied about being raped, and she said it's on camera. You guys can see it. So, based on that decision, the Supreme Court might turn it over. But I definitely agree that it should go back to the states. I definitely agree with that 100%. And I believe it will save a lot of lives. I believe that 100%. I agree with that 100%. That it should return to the states.
Your turn.
So, will you repeat the question for me just so I can refresh?
100%. So, Roe versus Wade, it made abortion federalized. Every state had to have some degree of abortion. Roe versus Wade potentially being overturned means that it'll be handled on a state-by-state basis. Some states will vote that they want it, some states will vote that they don't want it, and some states will fall somewhere in between. Is that a reasonable compromise?
So in theory, it's a reasonable compromise, but when you look at Roe versus Wade is actually based on privacy, and overturning Roe versus Wade leads to a lot of other questions, like are they going to ban birth control? Are they going to try and go federal with it? There's a lot of doors that open when you overturn Roe versus Wade, which is why we're trying to stop that from even happening in the first place. In theory, it would be fine for states to decide that. However, there are states that are trying to penalize their citizens for crossing the border to go get an abortion. And they're even going so far as to trying to arrest them for miscarrying, for having a stillbirth. It was something that was talked about earlier in the rally. This is something that happens in Ecuador and a couple other places where women are genuinely incarcerated because they had a stillbirth or a miscarriage. So while it could work in theory, and handling it on like a state-by-case basis, that's just letting people handle it on their own. So why can't we just leave it alone?
Understood. One last question. It's a little bit removed from the topic of abortion, but you mentioned the key word. It was birth control. Some people are starting to be a little bit concerned about the Supreme Court decision of Griswold versus Connecticut, which essentially made it where birth control was legal for everybody. It started with married couples, but after that it kind of evolved into anybody could take it, not just married couples, and it became the no questions asked thing that it is now, reversing Griswold versus Connecticut, which we don't know if that's on the table or not. This is just a hypothetical question. Reversing that, some conservatives feel like that can return a sense of wholesomeness, togetherness of society. Do you believe that? What's your take on that? Do you agree with birth control to begin with?
I mean, with birth control, I understand that there's a lot of other things that you can do, but I don't know. I personally don't agree with birth control. I believe in abstinence. I believe that people should choose their partners wisely. And marriage, statistically, marriage brings families marriage brings families together, but that's what I wanted to say.
That's fine. Your take?
So in terms of birth control, I have the Nexplanon implant in my arm right now. The reason I have it in my arm is A, I have really bad periods. It controls them. It helps me to actually be able to function. Birth control has other functions other than just birth control. B, when you talk about abstinence being the only form of birth control that you support, you can't guarantee that. My abuser did not ask me for consent before he had sex with me. That was not consensual. I did not make that choice. My abstinence was not in my hands. So that's where that argument falls apart. Abstinence only sex education has been proven not to work, and it just ends up making things worse. I mean, now you have kids who don't understand what consent is. They don't understand what birth control is. They end up in bad situations. Taking that information out of the hands of minors who don't understand isn't going to help at all. So trying to take birth control away, first you're going to say we can't abort babies if something does happen. And then you take away our only way to make sure we don't get pregnant besides not having sex, but people who sexually assault people get less jail time than people who have a miscarriage. There's a lot of morals that kind of come into play here, so it can be a nuanced topic, but honestly, banning birth control is illogical, and it's just going to feed more into what I personally think the agenda is, which is more worker bees and feeding capitalism.
You guys,
I just want to tell you, like, I believe in the nuclear family, you know, complete abstinence, you know. That your case scenario is not the same case for everybody else, you know, and everyone has a different background, but go ahead.
You guys have both been great. I appreciate both perspectives. It's been great. I do have one other question. I'm just so compelled because you guys have been so forthcoming and informative. I appreciate this a lot. So you guys are both familiar with the comedian Dave Chappelle? Both?
Yes.
Okay. So he made a joke. I can't remember in which stand-up special, but he made a joke pertaining to abortion in one of his more recent stand-up specials. And essentially what he was trying to convey with the joke is if women don't want the courts to have a say in whether or not they can abort a baby, is it fair for courts to have a say of whether or not, in the case that they do decide to have a baby, a man has to pay child support? Because that's another argument that's out there. So it's like, well, some women, they're of the case, of the perspective, I don't want courts to decide whether I can have a baby or not. It's my decision, my choice. Some men are out there are saying, well, I don't want courts to have an opinion whether I have to pay or not. It's my wallet, my choice. What's your take on that? Real quick, it doesn't have to be fully fleshed out or thought out. It was just something that came to mind as I heard you two debating your points.
Sorry, I'm processing this in my head.
Okay, great. Then tell them that no.
It feels fundamentally different. It's a matter of a woman having to go through 10 months of pregnancy. There are multiple health concerns during pregnancy. A man paying child support, he is not going through that kind of those kind of medical problems. He did assist in making the child, so it is fair that if the child is given birth to and present on Earth, it makes sense. I personally, I don't know. I don't really have an opinion on that one. That's a great question. I'm probably going to go over it in my head and kind of think about that.
Solid answer.
I don't think anybody should joke about abortion, first of all, but I do believe 100% that if a man decides and a woman decides to be intimate, the man should, and they have a baby, and as a result of that, they should be responsible to take care of that child. I definitely agree with that 100%. You know,
but the point of the joke was not so much if the man should be responsible, but if the woman is arguing my body, my choice, nobody else's choice. If that is the case, then should men be able to make the argument, well, my wallet, my choice, if you decide to have the baby, I don't want courts getting involved in me having to pay child support and what have you.
I see. It's a tough question, but I don't like. I just believe that. I can't. I'm trying.
It's very chaotic. You guys have been great. This is we're wrapping it up now. Yeah. So it's just. If women make the argument, my body, my choice. There's men out there that make the argument, my wallet, my choice.
I believe it's a counter argument to kind of like shoulder hypocrisy. it's a powerful statement. But I do believe that men should be responsible for having, for having a child. They do. I do believe that. But I understand that joke.
But should the courts get involved? Should they be able to get involved?
I don't think so. No.
Thank you guys so much. Have a great day. Shake hands. Let me see you guys shake hands. All right. If you like this stuff, make sure you check out our weekly Tuesday episodes on all major podcast platforms: Apple, Google, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and Spotify. And while you're at it, follow us at Hanging with Apes on Twitter.